Now, let us try to know the sentence and go into details of what sentences are. A complete sentence must have three characteristics. What are the three characteristics of a sentence? Firstly, in written form, a sentence begins with a capital letter when you write. In oral speech, it cannot be indicated, but in written, the sentence should begin with a capital letter and it ends with a period, a full stop, or a note of interrogation or a note of exclamation. As in our previous video, we have learned that it begins with a capital letter and according to the tone of the sentence, it may end with a full stop. If it is a statement, a note of interrogation, that means the punctuation mark, question mark is used. If it is a question, and an exclamation mark is if it is a sentence which expresses happiness, wonder, anger, sorrow. And now let us check what is the second element that should be present. The second is that it must express a complete thought, not fragmented. That is what we have talked about earlier, that a sentence must express a complete thought. And thirdly, it must contain at least one subject and one verb comprising an independent clause. So, one subject and one verb at least should be present in the sentence. Now, what are the different types of sentences? Let us check. Structurally, sentences are of four types. What are the four types? Simple sentence, compound sentence, complex sentence, and compound complex sentence. So these are basically, from the structural point of view, the four types of sentences. Now let us go on to look at what these types of sentences are. A simple sentence consists of one independent clause. An independent clause contains a subject and verb and expresses a complete thought. That is what an independent clause means. So it contains a subject and a verb that expresses a complete thought. What is the example of simple sentence? I always wanted to become a writer. One clause, one verb. So this is an example of simple sentence. Now, what is compound sentence? A compound sentence is two or more independent clauses joined by a conjunction or semicolon. Each of these clauses could form a sentence alone. So, it must have one or more than two or more than two independent clauses with no dependent clauses. And conjunctions, punctuations are used to join these kind of sentences. You will understand it better when we read the example. I always wanted to become a writer, comma is a punctuation mark, and she wanted to become a doctor. Two independent clauses and two verbs are present in this sentence. There are two sentences basically that are joined together by a punctuation mark and a conjunction. Like here, the punctuation mark is used after the first sentence is complete. I always wanted to become a writer. And the other sentence is joined, or the other clause is joined by this conjunction, and she wanted to become a doctor. If you want to separate this sentence into two sentences, then also these sentences will make sense. That is what compound sentences are, that it is joined by conjunctions and punctuations. Conjunctions, punctuations, or both. Now, let us move on to the other type of sentence. Other type of sentence which is based on structure. Complex sentence. A complex sentence consists of an independent clause plus a dependent clause. What is a dependent clause? A dependent clause starts with a subordinating conjunction or a relative pronoun and contains a subject and verb, but does not express a complete thought. So a complex sentence has more than one clause, but one of them must be an independent clause. The others must be dependent clauses. In compound sentence, both two or more clauses were there, but all were independent clauses. But here, one has to be independent clause and the others must be dependent clauses. There are also some particular connectors for the clauses of a complex sentence to be connected. Now, let us take the example. I know that you always wanted to be a writer. This is a, here I know is the dependent clause. And you always wanted to be a writer is an independent clause. So, one independent clause and one dependent clause. This makes a complex sentence. Here, in a complex sentence, there must be at least one independent clause and the other clauses present in the sentence must be dependent clause, like this example. Now, we move on to the last type of sentence based on structure, that is compound complex sentence. What is a compound complex sentence? A compound complex sentence consists of at least two independent clauses and one or more dependent clauses. So there are here in compound complex sentence, which is a combination of both compound and complex sentence, here at least two independent clauses has to be present and one or more dependent clauses. Let us go on to check how a compound complex sentence is formed. I know that you always wanted to become a writer, comma, but I always wanted to become a doctor. Here, you always wanted to become a writer. I always wanted to become a doctor are two independent clauses. As has been said that in compound complex sentence, there should be at least two independent clauses. So that condition is fulfilled by these two independent clauses. And I know is a dependent clause. So that condition is also fulfilled in this example. And as we know that both this type of sentence is a combination of both compound sentence and complex sentence. Now, you always wanted to become a writer, comma, but I always wanted to become a doctor. This is actually a compound sentence because it has been connected by using a comma and a conjunction. So, and I know is a dependent clause with the independent clauses serves the purpose of the complex sentence. So, this fulfills the criteria of a compound complex sentence.